Blog Talk Radio.
Jean-Luc, Jordy Specs, mysteries on the holodecks, asteroids, triple droids, telepathic betazoids, transporter, deadly claw, visitor from LA Law, photons, no Kirk, captain has gone berserk, shuttlecraft, Council Troy, Dr. Crusher's little boy, Klingon rights, parasites, new heights, phaser fights, Data's head, Tasha's dead, Riker's hanging by a thread, celebration, transformations, everyone to battle station. Start the series. It's the next generation on your favorite station. We didn't start the series, but when we are gone, it'll still be on. We didn't start the series. It's the next generation on your favorite station. We didn't start the series.
Hey, good evening, Star Trek fans. Welcome to another exciting show of Trek Talkin' with Ken, Dan, and Jim. We have a great show planned for you guys tonight. We have the creative team and some of the awesome actors from Star Trek Horizon with us tonight. We're going to get a chance to talk to them, as will you guys. You will be able to call and ask them some questions, and you can shoot them questions in the chat room if you'd like. And we're going to have some fun with this thing. So hang out with us for a couple of hours and have some fun. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce each one of the people that we have with us from Star Trek Horizon. And I'm going to start with Marc Bowers. He plays Commander Jackson Gates. He's the first officer. How you doing tonight, Marc?
I'm great. How are you?
We're doing good. What's going on with you tonight?
Not much. Just trying to stay warm and looking forward to, talking with you guys and talking about all this movie. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's going to be fun. The next off, I'd like to introduce you guys to Paul Lang. He plays Captain Harrison Hawk. He's the captain, and he's described as a veteran warrior. How you doing tonight, Paul?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us on tonight.
Hey, no problem. Are you really a veteran warrior?
I am actually a veteran, yes. 1st Marine Division, 1st Mardiv.
So I bet that helped out with your role, huh?
It helped. Yes, it did. It helped me out with my role in dealing with the Admiral Tommy Kraft.
Hey, leave the Navy alone.
And the next person we have with us tonight is Ryan Weber. He plays Commander Francis Brooks. He's the chief engineer. How you doing tonight, Ryan?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Thank you for taking some time to join us. And the leader of the pack, the admiral of all, is Tommy. Tommy, are you with us?
I am with us. Can you hear me? I lost the call for a second. I had to call back in.
Yeah, you dropped off my line, so now I don't have a name next to your number. I'm not sure who you are, but I know you're there somewhere. So, yeah, Tommy, I just introduced Paul and Marc and Ryan a little bit, and I wanted to get with you before we get started. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Star Trek Horizons and where you got the idea from and how the production is moving along?
Well, Star Trek Horizon is an Enterprise fan film, essentially. Basically, actually a couple of years ago now, I really got back into Enterprise, and I really found a passion for the show that I had forgotten or didn't know I had since I watched it when it first came on. And it basically inspired me to want to do this movie where I could conclude a lot of the storylines that didn't get a chance to be concluded in the show when they were canceled. And so the Romulan War, of course, is a big part of that, and it's the main story of our film.
And, I have the trailer posted on our Facebook page if anybody wants to go there and check it out. It looks really, really good. I wanted to send a shout-out to our good friend David Hernandez, because without David, this show or the Axonar show that we did a couple of weeks ago never would have happened, so thank you to David. And the reason why we have you guys on is because a lot of people thought that we were slanted towards Axonar. We weren't giving other fan films a chance, so when David told me he knew you, I jumped on the opportunity to have you guys on the show because, first and foremost, we want to get the word out to Star Trek fans that Star Trek is alive and there are other things going on besides just the movies, and you guys fill that hole perfectly. So I'd like to say thank you for doing that for us. But back to Enterprise. I know Star Trek Enterprise is not one of the most popular series, and a lot of fans would classify it as their least favorite. So why did you pick that particular Star Trek era to base your film in?
Well, at the time that I picked Enterprise, to make a long story short, Enterprise is helped me through a lot of issues in my own life. It was kind of gave me that creative spark in some ways that other stories wouldn't have, and I just think it's a genuinely good show, and I think that a lot of people don't give it enough of a chance. And the idea of the explorer's heart with Captain Archer and the overall theme of the show really, really resonated with me. And it gave me this passion to do a story, a feature film, an incredibly difficult feature film that I may not have otherwise had. And I think when people complain about Enterprise, sometimes it's a matter of opinion. I think it's a quality show, and there was a lot there that inspired me, and that's really the basis behind it.
Now, I noticed in your trailer that there's actually, you have 4 NX-01s, 3 because of the Enterprise. Is that correct?
Well, we actually have 2 in the movie. The NX-01 Enterprise and the NX-04 Discovery, and those are the 2 NX-class ships that are featured in the film.
So what about the Columbia from the TV series? That's not in this movie?
No, it's not. It's basically just mentioned in the film that the NX-02 and the NX-03 weren't available for the mission that this film centers on. And the main ships that lead up to this mission are the NX-01 and the NX-04.
Now, obviously you saw the Enterprise episode Minefield.
Yes, sir.
Now, in your film, I noticed that you used the same Praetus-class birds of prey, which look just phenomenal in the trailer, I might add. So the Romulans don't have ridgy foreheads like we see on The Next Generation. Did you do that just to stay current with what they were doing at the time on Enterprise, or was that a conscious decision that you made?
Well, the Romulans on Enterprise did actually have the ridgy foreheads, and they do in this film as well. It may be hard to see in the trailer in that shot where we see one of the Romulan commanders, but the ridgy foreheads are there. And with regard to the chip, I have to shout out to artist Ryan McClure, who modeled that and textured it, and he did a fantastic job, and it looks really brilliant in the film. And so we used that design as well as some other original Romulan designs that we came up with for the movie, and also the TOS Romulan ship flies alongside of them.
They look phenomenal in the clip. Congratulations to you and your team, because they look really, really good, really good. Now,
thank you.
In the clip that you have on the trailer, is that Admiral the same Admiral as from Star Trek Enterprise?
He does look like him, doesn't he? That was actually accidental. It's actually not the same guy, but he's actually playing Admiral Gardner, because in Enterprise, Admiral Forrest was killed in Season 4, and later on in the season, they make mention of Admiral Gardner being the one that's in charge now. And so Tim Kaiser, who plays our Admiral Gardner, Admiral Gardner was never seen in Enterprise, so we felt okay casting a different actor to play that role, because there was no other actor to live up to.
Yeah, because when I was watching the trailer and I saw him, I thought he looked an awful lot like him.
Yeah, he does. But that was, and I didn't even actually realize it until, in fact, Tim, who plays the Admiral, he pointed that out to me. He's like, "Hey, I look a lot like that guy." And he's like, "Oh, well, I guess you do." And
he does.
I guess it's the accident.
Now, how was the episode how is the movie coming along? Are you almost ready for release? Because I noticed the trailer says in the winter.
Well, Originally, I wanted to have it done by December, which proved to be way too ambitious, especially because it's mostly me doing all of the post work. And so when I made the trailer, I just decided to go with winter because I wasn't sure if I'd be able to hit December, and obviously I wasn't now. And now we are, I'm saying right now Q1 2015, and basically the reason is, as I said, it's just a ton of work. And it's mostly just me doing it. And I want, especially now that I've spent over 2 years on this project, 2.5 years, I want to make sure I do it right and release it when it's ready. And so the filming has been done for quite a while. It's just all on the post work now, and that's what's holding up the release. And certainly once we're ready to make an announcement, you can be sure we will have another trailer out for that. And the specific release date will be on that trailer.
Now, what can you tell us about, if anything, about the storyline? Without, if you don't want to give out any spoilers, or that's up to you.
Well, I mean, it's basically kind of continuing what I said earlier, is that the big thing I wanted to tackle is the Romulan War. And what I also wanted to do was tie in some other elements from Enterprise and from Trek history. And so if anyone's seen the opening scene, which is available on YouTube, it's like the prologue to the story. It follows these two Iconians. And so there are things in the story that deal with the Iconians, which Trekkies will know from TNG and DS9, were an ancient race of aliens that I thought were really interesting but didn't get explored enough. And so their story is kind of featured in here. And also the story of Future Guy, which is the shadowy figure from Enterprise that would give orders to the Suliban, is one of our main characters in the film. And so the story kind of weaves all of those elements together within the Romulan War.
So basically, if Enterprise had actually gotten a 5th, 6th, 7th season, then this kind of could fill in for that?
Yeah, that was originally my goal with this when I started writing down basic story ideas, was there were very clearly things when the show ended that they were building up to in subsequent seasons. You could see that they were really building up to start the Romulan War, and they had plans to reveal the identity of Future Guy later in the series, and since these things, they didn't get a chance to resolve these things, and the show ended with the founding of the Federation. This actually takes place a year before the founding of the Federation during the Romulan War.
Sounds really, really good. I'm looking forward to it. It looks phenomenal. Hey, if anybody has any questions for Tommy, you can give us a call at 646-668-2433. I'll say that one more time. It's 646-668-2433. If you do call, be patient because I've got a lot of people here on the switchboard trying to keep track of them. So if I don't get right to you, just be patient. I definitely will. One more time, that's 646-668-2433. I'm going to move on here for a second to Captain Harrison Hawk, played by Paul Lang. Paul, what can you tell us about the Captain of the Horizon?
Well, the Captain of the Horizon is more of a character kind of modeled after the Scott Bakula type of character rather than the Chris Pine version that we see in the movies now. It's more of a realistic captain. You know, he's not a young teenage captain. He's a veteran. He's otherwise known as the Bald Eagle. That's kind of an inside joke. But he's been out there fighting, and trying to figure out what's going on for the last couple years now. And he's dealing with, a mission that I'm not going to give too much about, but, it has to deal with conflict within his own crew, as well as there is some romance in there. We'll kind of leave that alone. But he's just trying to maintain. This time period that Tommy has brought us to is one where they're really figuring out what's going on. They don't really have a full grasp on the Romulans, obviously. Never even seen one, and they're really starting to figure out how are they going to address this other species. So the captain, the captain is, he's more of what would be a standard type of military, even though I know that Star Trek's not military, but he would be more of a standard like naval captain, of a ship. Very regimented, by the book, does his orders, does his job, and is just trying to, get through to the next day.
Now, how did you get attached to this project in the first place?
Well, as it turns out, Marc Bowers, who is also in this, was filming I believe his thesis film called Extended Slate, and Tommy was the cameraman on it. And so Tommy called me after we had filmed, and he had put this in front of me, and I at first, was a little cautious, because I've been involved, with projects that are done, by fan films. And I realized the scope of what he was looking to do, and it's daunting, the amount of work that's put into it. But after after talking to and seeing some of Tommy's work, I was just blown away. And I decided that I was going to grab a hold of his coattails and not let go until we were both sitting in our agents in Los Angeles.
Now, were you a Star Trek fan prior to this project?
Not as much as these guys are. That is for sure. I had seen them. I hadn't, I definitely hadn't seen all of them. I had known about Enterprise series. Being the, I guess the oldest guy probably on set. Maybe Tim's about my age too, the guy who plays the Admiral. More familiar with the original series and, maybe the Next Generation or whatever, TNG or whatever the heck they call that, and Deep Space Nine, and of course, Captain Picard and Kirk and those guys. So Enterprise was a little bit later. I believe that's around 2001, 2004. So I really wasn't as schooled on that series. But I have been brought up to date, put it that way. Listening to Ryan and Tommy talk, you can get an education. Those two could literally write a book.
Now, let me put you on the spot here as Captain Harrison Hawk. Who's your favorite captain on all the Star Trek series, if you had to pick one?
Janeway. The only one I'd date.
Janeway.
Isn't that the female one, right? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, actually, come on. It's not a hard question. I loved William Shatner. So Captain Kirk's always been, he really was, the feel for it. They all have their own strengths. I believe Sisko, that's how you say it. That captain was, strong. I like Picard because he was the most cerebral. But Kirk was, just the guy. And then of course, they all have their own strengths. They were all unique. Bakula was the most realistic, in terms of like what he was going through, and that, in the beginning of the Federation and so on.
All right, and we're going to move on now. We're going to talk to Marc Bowers, who's your first officer, Commander Jackson Gates. How you doing, Marc? What can you tell us about your character?
All right. Let's see. Commander Gates, I would say, really in a nutshell, he's sort of the sidekick to Captain Hawk in the sense that he's his right wing man. He's the one who I think keeps Hawk, focused and on task and kind of centered. Really, he's somebody that really doesn't have much of a sense of humor. He's a very, I would say, a dry character. But I think he needs to be in order to balance the power between himself and Hawk, on the ship. So
now, how would you compare, say, Commander Jackson Gates would say Commander Riker from Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Well, I mean, I think Gates is much more to the point. He's kind of like, this is what needs to be done. This is what we faced. This is what is coming up. And this is the pathway to that, to the next level, so to speak. Whereas Riker, in my opinion, from the limited experience that I've had with TNG, was much more of an emotional person, I think. I hope I'm not wrong on that, but from what I've seen, he seems to have been, able to bring some emotionality to the instruction that he was giving and to the balance that he was creating on his ship and in his circumstance.
Yeah, I've always liked Riker. He's one of my favorite first officers. Now, would you let the captain go down on an away team, or would you make him stay on the ship? Little Star Trek question.
Okay. Oh, wow. I think I would let him do that exploration, and then come on back and let me know how it went. And if you need me to go down the second time, then I'm happy to do so. I believe that. I think that's kind of how I would put their friendship, their relationship in a nutshell.
Now, as first officer, have you been friends with Captain Harrison prior to being assigned to the ship, or is this like your first mission with him?
I believe they have a little bit of a friendship history. I think there's it's sort of like they came up together in a sense from what I understand. Maybe I'm wrong, and Tommy, let me know if I am. But from my reading of the script and from the experiences that we've acted out together on set and all the backstory, seems to be that they've known each other at least a little before they've come to this point. So
you guys kind of have a history together prior to us seeing your characters in the movie.
Yeah, at least a strong familiarity. I don't know about an undying, years on end friendship, but definitely a comfort level with each other enough to be able for me to get him on track when he's coming apart at the seams, and then for him to also kind of look at me and be like, listen, to be done, let's get through this, and I don't take it personally. It's the job, it's the business, so to speak. So, or my character.
All right. Excellent. I'm going to move on now to Ryan Weber. He's the chief engineer of the Horizon. Ryan, are you still with us?
I am. Good evening.
Hello. You've been hearing everyone else talk, so now you have an opportunity to put your 2 cents in. What's it like being the chief engineer on the NX-04?
It's about time I got to talk. Let's put it that way. No, I'm just kidding. Being a chief engineer is a big role. This guy that keeps everything working and keeps it moving.
Now, would you say that your character is more, Trip from Enterprise, or a Scotty the Miracle Worker from TOS?
I would put him more as a Trip Tucker kind of a guy.
A hands-on, not afraid to jump right in and do what needs to be done.
Definitely.
Now, what can you tell us about the ship? Now, are we actually going to see the engine room? Are we going to see you working on the engines and that type of thing in the movie?
Oh yes, there's quite a bit that happens down in that engine room. Lots of explosions and some pretty good battle scenes. I think I got quite an action scene out of that. I had to do all kinds of crazy jumping from some bizarre platform, and take after take. It was tremendous, let me tell you that.
Wow, so you didn't have a stunt double. You did all the stunts yourself.
Oh, yes. I am I do all my stunts, every one of them.
Wow. Now, I take it that you were a Star Trek fan before you came to this project?
Yes, I've been a fan for a number of years. I kind of, in 2004, I thought I'd hung up my spacesuit for the last time. I did a fan film series myself from '99 to the mid 2000s there, and thought I had never do this again, and I ended up I'm a filmmaker here in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area. Happened to be casting for a web show that I do called County Sheriff, and I was on a website and saw this and said, "What the heck's going on? Somebody's got a Star Trek fan film in my state, and I'm not on it." So I did everything in my power to get with Tommy and develop a bit of a friendship there, and it's been a lot of fun.
Wow, you're actually, you really are living the dream then.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me put you right on the spot. So, you know, of all the engineers that we've seen on Star Trek shows, Geordi LaForge, Scotty, Trip, which one do you think your character is the closest? Did you draw from any of these characters to create your character, or did you just go it, you know, cold?
You know, I kind of went at it pretty cold. I didn't get a sense that this character is of any relation to the other engineers you've seen through the years. My last character that I played in Star Trek Encarta was kind of like this. He's a bit darker and grungier, I'd say, this Commander Francis. If anything, I think when I was prepping for the role, I thought a little bit about a guy named Benjamin Maxwell from Star Trek The Next Generation. He was, I think, captain of the Rutledge.
Yep.
Okay.
He went rogue.
He did. I think if I had a ship, that's what I would have done if I was playing that.
Yes,
my
that
character,
was a Nebula. That was a Nebula. That was actually, I think, the first time we saw the Nebula class starship on TNG.
Yes, that was prior to the one where they detected the Romulans. So yes, I believe so.
Yeah, that was an excellent. Well, that's a good analogy right there. Now I notice. Let me see. Pull up my reading here. There's a Romulan. Let me see. There's a Romulan defector in this movie, and the Romulans want her back, is what I'm seeing here. So, what can you tell us about this Romulan character, if anything, and why do the Romulans want her back so bad?
You know, I think that's one of the great. First of all, I think that Tommy here crafted an absolutely tremendous story. I think he spent a lot of good time. I mean, when I first got the script from a filmmaker perspective, you know, it's hard to get through a feature-length script in one sitting. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a Star Trek fan, but I couldn't get out of this thing. I think this story is really well done. And in terms of it, I think that the reveal of that Romulan perspective is just so large to the story, I'd hesitate to comment on that. But I think, you know, you could draw parallels to that episode of The Next Generation where you have that admiral that defected in The Defector. I think there's some similarities there, but it's really its own story.
It sounds really good. I think
she's
Tommy's
really
done an
cute.
excellent job. Good. Now, I want to jump back up to Paul here for a second so I can get all you guys on so that you don't get bored hanging on the phone line. Paul, you're still with us? So, we've talked about your character a little bit here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your acting career, and you know if you have any projects that are going on after Horizons or anything that you'd like to share with the fans that are listening.
Well, yeah, I'm really. I mean, this project here is the one that we're really looking forward to in Michigan. I am going to be in Warner Brothers movie that Ben Affleck's in, Batman versus Superman. I did spend some time on set there. And I've got some kids' movies coming out. Thrill Ride will be out. I play Al Capone. I usually play a villainous character. I do play a police officer every so often as well. So Captain of a lot of people who see the trailer are, a little bit surprised that, Tommy cast such like a rough character as the captain of the ship. And I'm really grateful that he did. It adds a whole nother dimension to Star Trek, so that they're not all the ones that are captain now. Chris Pine, he's a great actor and all that, but he definitely looks like he's right out of the academy. Whereas our ship looks like it's something that could really be out there. As for me, I'm an actor. I live here in Michigan until Monday, which I'm going back home to California. That's where I'm from. So I'll be in LA. And, as for the projects that are coming up, just finishing a few more movies that will be out later this year. Like I said, Thrill Ride will be out, and then there's Pups United, which is another kids' film. Last year was a successful year, which was a little, which actually, and Tommy, when you're doing a film where there's limited funds, and you have working actors in there, you really have a heck of a time scheduling. And as it turned out, this summer, I landed one of the largest roles I've ever had in a feature. And that kind of I had to go from shooting one film to the next and to the other, shave my head for this one. And, it was challenging. I'm glad that Tommy stuck with me. There was times when, you could tell the frustration was palpable, due to scheduling. But the project's so worth it, and his level of commitment, nobody could match Tommy's level of commitment. His level of commitment is insane. He's putting everything he has into this, and you can tell. You can see that his level of dedication is phenomenal for this film. So this film took up pretty much about a year, and it's it's really eye-opening to what a person can do with just dedication and perseverance.
Well, I, for one, am very, very glad that we caught you before you moved out to L.A., because the last time we did a show on Axonar, we ended up having to do it from 11:30 at night to 1:30 in the morning, and it was a killer.
Pacific Standard Time, yep.
That was the first question I asked Tommy. I said, what time zone are we all in so we can try to be decent here? And I was very pleased when I got the answer. So yep. I'm glad about that. So let me ask Marc. I'm going to ask you the same question, Marc. What's been going on with you, and do you have any projects you want to talk about? And same question.
I don't do acting full time. I wish I did. But in my full time career, I'm a nurse practitioner, so I do that about 3 days a week, and I see patients and help them to get over their flu symptoms and sinus issues and all that fun stuff. And then sort of for fun on the side, I do the acting / voiceover stuff, and I've done that for about the last 2 or 3 years. I've finally actually had time to be able to work that into my schedule, whereas, in the previous 30-something years, I never made time for it. So, but I've really been enjoying it. And as far as things coming up, I've got a couple little, short films that I'm working on, and got a couple voiceover gigs that I've booked recently for some local companies, and so that all that will keep me busy for sure. And I sort of jokingly say that whatever Paul Lang doesn't book, I'm sort of second in line for, which is a good thing. Honestly, I'm still very honored. Paul, don't get me wrong. Yep. I am loving the Paul Lang Leftovers, and now that I find out he's going to L.A., I don't know. We'll see what's going to happen with that. But,
time to quit the job, buddy.
I think Paul and I are sort of
time to quit your day job.
I wish I had enough projects on the docket to financially be able to do that, but I think in a way Paul and I are sort of the same character type, I guess, sort of. We go in for a lot of the same auditions and things like that. So he's more seasoned, of course, and he can, pull out an audition like nobody's business. And I look to him and I respect him and for that. And I, in a way, he's sort of been quite an inspiration to me. So I have to throw that in. But anyway, so yeah, a couple little things coming up, and yeah, some voiceover stuff that. That I might have going. I'm finding out that I might just have a face for voiceover. Yeah, so that's a joke.
Now
I feel your pain.
with Paul moving out to L.A. and not being around, might we see the possible demise of Captain Hawk and First Officer Jackson stepping in as captain for the sequel, perhaps?
You read my mind. I hope, Tommy, you're hearing this, right? Because that is the joke that I made to him.
No, it's my job, everyone. I'll do it. I've got it. Don't worry.
What these guys don't realize is I'm the one that's really in charge here, and so on any given day, depending on how much they either piss me off or on my good side, since the movie is not out yet, anything could happen, really. I mean, who says that the ceiling doesn't just fall on Jackson Station? Bad things happen all the time.
This is true.
That could actually, yeah. And I have to say, I've never been fired from a job so much in my life than I have from this job. And Tommy knows exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm sure the others do. Paul and Ryan do as well. Whenever you disagree with something that Tommy thinks or says, it's automatic fired. Until, of course, you see him for the next day of shooting, and everything's cool again, But
he keeps forgetting that the film is shot, and I don't think he wants to reshoot it.
Right.
Right, and it should be noted too that I don't actually fire people, but I do say I'm going to a lot. It keeps them on their toes. Not really. It's just our way of playing around. But yeah, Marc especially, I fire him all the time. Basically every time we shoot.
Wow. So are you wearing a red shirt, Marc?
I guess I should be. I mean, if not in the movie, then in real life, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up with Ryan. He's still on the line with us. Ryan, I'll ask you the same question. Give you a chance to tell people a little bit about yourself and your acting career and projects that are on the burner for you.
Sure. I guess I've been acting for a lot of years. I started pretty young, and through high school basically started, like I said, my own Star Trek fan film way back in '99, and did that. I did 4 films and moved on to film school and went to college down in Florida and had a blast and learned a lot and kept making movies and stayed pretty active. I've got a web series I run called County Sheriff, and then I'm shooting my first documentary right now, actually, so we hope to have that out in a few months. And I just try to stay busy with it. It's a real passion, and I've really connected with Tommy. I think it reminds me a lot of my younger self, and just that how much a lot of people easily can comment on these fan films, and I've been in his shoes, and I just know how nasty is in some ways some people can be that are out there. And I'm telling you that making these movies, you got to put your every energy into them, and every frame relentlessly that renders on your computer. It's so much work, and a lot of credit to him. He's just been an absolute staple with all that stuff, and it's a lot of work. So really appreciative towards that. And again, just I think people are really going to like this story. I think it is just tremendous, and from what I've seen on set and some of the roughs, I think it's going to be a really solid movie.
Now, let me ask you, on the set, Was Tommy a whip cracking slave driver, or did you guys have some fun, like a bunch of Trek fans hanging out on the set of this thing?
Well, did he direct Paul? Is Paul still here? I can't even remember if he was there. Was he there?
I'm here. Tommy was there directing. Yeah, Tommy is he directs with intuition. He's a very intuitive director.
Nah, he was a blast. We had a lot of fun with him, and I'm sure him with us. So
Tommy.
I think that Tommy, for his first, I've worked with a lot of different directors, and it's his vision. He had a vision, and you could tell this is his film. He's making the story that has been in his head, and now he allowed us, obviously, and as actors, it's nice to have some freedom to, maybe change the way you deliver one line or another, but the overall story, he really kept us on track on telling, not only like just what is like the story that's you'll see the words and all that, but also kind of what's going on, behind the scenes. Ryan's character specifically has some really emotional issues, going on, and I had a good time with Ryan filming that. I thought that was a pretty good, powerful scene. Some of it may make it into the film or not, But, he set the stage, and he did a good job of keeping us on track. It's hard when you have, a bunch of actors in a room. We're all ADD. So, keeping us focused and keeping us working, I'm sure there was times when Tommy just wanted to, throw something. But very calm, kept his cool. And we have a makeup artist here in Metro Detroit that that those two had such a fun time bantering between themselves, and a lot of it was filmed also at Tommy's house, and we definitely got a shout out to his parents. Tommy has just great parents. His dad and his mom are so supportive and so sweet and so nice, and I'm sure that anybody, if anyone else was trying to do this in their home, they would have ran into conflict. But his folks got behind him 100%. Here he is coming out of college, and instead of getting a job, he's making a Star Trek film. Yeah, and they just jumped right behind him. And so, I think he got a lot of his technique and his calmness and his understanding from his folks.
Now, Dan, are you with us, Dan?
Yes, sir.
I've been talking long enough, and last time we had our acts in our show, you had a couple questions that we didn't get around to, so I'll give you an opportunity to ask these great guys any questions if you have anything you'd like to ask.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you coming on the show. As stated previously by my lead host, because I'm just the lower host here, so... also, the Marine in the room... yeah, I got to pick on you. I was Navy, so picking on admirals makes me feel hurt. But
hey, we're all I was part of the Navy. Marines are part of the Navy.
Well, we won't go about the acronym. That's a whole side story. I want to say thank you first off for you as the cast and Tommy as the writer and director to give us Star Trek, because I'll share a little bit of my thought on Star Trek, and I prefer Enterprise over most of the other, I prefer Enterprise over Voyager, so it was nice to see one fan film, in this case fan movie, group movie, that picks Enterprise up, because I truly believe that we were cut short of a lot of stories that could have been, phenomenal. I know that they were talking to bring Shran in as a regular character and stuff like that for the rest of the series. I think we missed out on it. And again, I want to tell you I appreciate that you brought Enterprise to the front line, a continuation. But I do want to say that I am amazed at just in just in the preview and the trailer of the detail to the backgrounds and the bridge and all that stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool, and also showing us how you
built
guys.
It all.
Go ahead.
We built all of that. It's all real.
Yeah. No, I mean it was. Yeah, I mean for I'm sure what it would be a shoestring budget by Hollywood standards. You guys did a phenomenal job. It really, and the little vignette or short little clip that you showed, with the camera angles and stuff like that I watched. Amazing. It really brings out stuff I didn't realize it takes to make films like this. Well, big thing I wanted to mention on this is, how long did the script take to bring together? I mean, were you thinking about this when you heard the series was canceled, Tommy, or did you, sit around and go, what, I think I'm going to sit down and do this? Because I know a lot of writers, script writers, have these ideas bouncing around their heads and then have an opportunity to put it together due to situations in real life.
This particular story didn't strike me until when I rewatched Enterprise a couple of years ago. I actually rewatched it 2 times in a row. Like I went through the whole series and then I did it again. Because when it was first on, I was just in my early mid-teens, and while I definitely wanted to be a filmmaker at the time, it wasn't anything I was capable of pursuing in any serious way, so I wasn't really doing anything seriously with stories at the time. And so when I rewatched Enterprise, I really started thinking about, having much more experience as a filmmaker and as a writer and a director, about the things that they could have done with the show had it continued. And I had all of these ideas for how to continue on the story, and so I actually, at the time when I was in college, when I started this, it was 2012. It was winter of 2012 and spring of 2013 when I really started getting going on it. That was the date. And I spent a lot of my class time when I probably should have been taking notes. At least it looked like I was taking notes because I was writing story ideas for the movie in my notebooks. And so I over the course of a few months, I came up with a script and I polished it and did a few drafts. And that initial period is when I started doing the modeling of the ship and the virtual sets and all of that. And so the story is something that just kind of organically happened this time around. It wasn't really anything I was thinking of before I had rewatched the show.
Well, luckily for us, you did. So I'm just happy to see this stuff. Now, I believe it was Mark. Did you say that you had done prior fan stuff?
No, that'd be Ryan.
Ryan, I'm sorry. I was cooking while you guys were talking, so I lost track of voices to names.
Well, what did you make me?
I made stuffed green peppers with some nice tomatoes over the top. Besides the point. But I'm only in Wisconsin, guys. Come on over. Okay, then Ryan, I bounced all of you against IMDb. It's just standard practice for me because it's amazing what kind of information you can get out of it. And I seen that I seen that pop up. Is that on YouTube for the listeners to catch up on, or is there some location we can get these prior videos?
My old fan series? Yeah, they're all on YouTube. It's called Star Trek Encarta.
Okay. Yeah, I seen that. And then also I seen where'd my IMDb go? There it is. The 2004 the sheriff one? That was
County Sheriff, yep.
Yeah, that's been going for a long time. It says you're on there 22 times, so that's a good one. I'll have to check that out too.
It's more of a comedy, so you got to be in for a good laugh if you watch it.
Well, I live a comical life, so why not just add to it? Paul, you're moving to Los Angeles, you said.
Yeah, I'm leaving Monday. I also sell solar power. So being in Michigan, being an actor and selling solar power is probably not the best state in the union to do this. So I decided I'm actually from Oakland. My family's all from Los Angeles. I do have some acting opportunities out there, and my son graduates high school here, and it's time to go. So it's 75 degrees in Santa Monica, and it's about 12 degrees here, and you do the math.
Well, selling solar panels or solar energy and acting, and you live in Michigan. That's like the nexus of what not to do in Michigan, just saying.
Exactly. I feel like Sisyphus rolling that rock up the hill. Michigan's actually a great state. We got great people. The winters are brutal, but it's a great place to raise a family. But LA is where, if you're going to, pursue acting as a career, or solar power for that matter, Southern California is the place to be.
Agreed. Been there. I've been there, done that. Again, being in the Navy, Southern California, I've been there several times.
Oh yeah, yeah. I went to boot camp in San Diego, and I was stationed at Pendleton for about a year.
Yay. Like I said, I live in Wisconsin, right north of Illinois. So right on the northern Illinois-Wisconsin border. So I know the temperature gets cold.
Yep. And so it's a little bit more conducive to creativity, I think, when you're warm. Hollywood, California redid their film incentives. So there's a lot of talk about the films that are going to be returning back to California, and it's a good time for actors to be there.
Maybe the old days will come back. Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. I'm looking at IMDb at Marc, seeing what kind of stuff. I just had, as actors, I had a real quick question because I don't talk to actors very often. Do you guys submit your own stuff to IMDb? That's just a curious thing for me, and I thought I'd ask it real quick.
No.
I like to not.
I try not
no.
to.
Okay. Well, because some of the stuff that comes up on actors, you like uncredited 5-second snippet, and I'm like, wow, did they do that themselves, or did somebody sit down and take the time? Just
generally, what happens with IMDb is a film is made, and if it screens at a festival, you are then eligible for an IMDb submission. Or in this case, you can basically email them directly and ask them to put it up if you have if you are planning to premiere or have premiered it, which we are doing with Horizon. And so you can even just send a film to a festival. It doesn't have to premiere there. And that's all you really have to do with IMDb. Basically, anybody can be on there if they have a film sent into a festival.
I know it's not Star Trek related or Star Trek Horizon related, but I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to ask.
Certainly.
It's also
and I got to
encourage.
add, Dan, you are a hell of a co-host. Don't you ever forget that.
Everybody's got to be something in life. I might as well be a co-host. Okay. Something I set aside. So we already talked about you guys trying to, or whether you try to parallel it with previous characters. But my thing is, did you guys do like Star Trek related research? We're not saying that you looked up Wikipedia, but did you go in there and say, what kind of, I'll watch this to make sure I get my lines right, so my techno babble that comes up sounds Star Trek-ish. And we'll start with Paul.
Well, I did actually, as an actor, do some, just some kind of, watching some of the series and getting an idea of how they they moved around on the deck and all that. But Tommy, you know, if you messed something up, Tommy was there. He's a walking encyclopedia of Star Trek. And so, you know, if I, you know, he was able to catch the subtle things, like how I hold a communicator versus how it's held, you know, on the series. And, you know, he's definitely coming from, you know, a serious Star Trek background. So I really relied on him and his expertise to, you know, fill in and, you know, take my performance. And if I was doing something wrong, he would gently, you know, steer me in the correct direction. You know, and unless Ryan was on set, then if I was doing something wrong, Ryan would laugh and, you know, tell me, you know, how much of a putz I am.
So they didn't teach you the Picard maneuver, pulling down your clothes constantly?
No. The only maneuver that I was aware of was Riker, the way Riker jumps into his chair, the leg over the back of the chair move, and I was going to try to incorporate that into something.
Unfortunately, we couldn't find a place to incorporate the Riker maneuver, but I think you would have looked great doing it, Paul, considering the height difference between you and Riker.
Yeah, I definitely would have had to been with the second uniform, though. My first uniform, I really didn't have a lot of movement in the lower leg area that was possible.
Oh, those uniforms.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't, you know, I mean, it you know, we have to definitely give shout out to Tommy for being head seamstress. He, you know, all those uniforms were actually sewed and created.
And, no idea. That's the truth.
And as a matter of fact, on the Kickstarter, when he launched the Kickstarter, you know, I sat there and I was talking to my wife, and I said, "Well, I gotta buy my uniform." You know, I've never been a captain of a starship before. I went on to Kickstarter literally within, I can't even tell you what was it, not even a couple hours from the start of it, and the uniform was already gone. It was picked up by, I don't know, Tommy would know, a collector or something from Vegas.
I purchased it so I could lick it later.
Oh, dear God.
The real relationship between Hawk and Francis. That's the emotional tension going on, and that's the romance story you talked about, too.
There you go.
God, you guys sound really must have had fun on set, let's put it that way.
Well, I think the one character that had the most fun, though, was Lieutenant Mendez. And one of these days, you guys are going to have to track down Lieutenant Mendez and get his opinion on Star Trek Horizon.
Now, Tommy, are we gonna see a blooper reel at the end of this film?
Oh yeah, there will. In fact, I've posted a couple of them over the past few months. Just a couple of like one-shot bloopers on the Facebook page. There's a great one I just posted a week or two ago of Ryan. We were rolling takes, and he's looking up at the ceiling, and he just looks down all of a sudden in his best Sulu voice and says, "Shield, shield." And especially with Ryan, there's a lot of great outtakes like that. But there's also a lot of great outtakes with Paul and Marc and everybody else. And you can rest assured that when the film is done, there will be a very nice selection.
I'm looking forward to that.
Bribery.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, believe me.
Ken, are you still there, Ken?
Yeah, I'm still there, Jim.
I know you had some questions for Tommy, so now's your chance to ask them.
Okay, well, actually, maybe two questions, or at very least part A and part B. One, Tommy, your advice to anybody who is trying to enter the so-called speculative script market, and sort of part B to that question is, and you sort of answered it in your earlier remarks, do you believe that script writing is story-driven or formula-driven? In other words, can you actually really successfully write a script by following a magic formula that you read in a book?
Well, you can. I find that most stories tend to fall into that formula, whether on purpose or accidentally anyway. I mean, when you think about the typical 3-act structure of a story, whether or not you specifically lay out ahead of time, this is what Act 1 is, Act 2, and Act 3 is, you generally still wind up with your same overarching story layout, I guess. In terms of the spec script market, I mean, I'm really not the best person or maybe the most qualified to comment because I haven't sold any scripts or anything like that. I've been writing about as long as I can remember and been studying writing, and I've been making movies for a long time. And I think really the best way for anyone is just to start doing it. I don't think you have to follow a formula. You can if it helps you, and sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. It depends on whatever inspiration is striking me at the moment. And sometimes it's easier to lay out your basic structure ahead of time, what's going to happen very broadly in your 3 acts or whatever. And sometimes it's easier just to start writing a script with no outline. Sometimes it's easier to do both at the same time, to start an outline and then start writing some scenes so you can get a feel for your characters and then write some more outline, etc. And it really just depends on the kind of story you want to tell. I mean, if you're doing a feature or you're doing a series with a lot of episodes, depending on how connected the stories are, you certainly might want to do some kind of outlining. As I said, it really just depends on where the inspiration strikes you. I don't think it's necessarily has to be a formula.
So it's not it depends on the story. It's not necessary. In other words, you don't to write a successful screenplay, you do not necessarily have to put. In other words, your notes do not necessarily have to be overly copious, nor do you necessarily have to write the script before you write the script. In other words, you can pretty well just free-form it and just jot down a few things just to sort of keep you on track to make sure that you can do it in the 3 acts.
It really depends on the person, and I think a lot of times it just comes down to whatever way allows you to write a story best. And it's kind of the same principle of putting together an acting reel or a resume. You know, at the end of the day, what people care about is your performance as an actor. And so there's a lot of different ways to approach acting. And you can put together a resume that lists all the classes you've had and how you've been on all these shoots as extras and what have you. But at the end of the day, what directors and casting directors care about is if you can do what you're hired to do. And they don't really care about how you go about doing it within reason. And I think it's the same way with writing, and it's basically how I approach things as well. I mean, there's certainly some ways you can do it.
Just to give you an example, a personal example, I don't do screenplays. I have books stories are written, novel form, and about the only real outlines I do are just, I have a rough idea of where I begin. I have a rough idea of where I want to write the ending, and what I basically do is I chop the story into about 6 or 7 parts, and then just have a rough idea for each one of the parts. But again, I don't go into excruciating detail. I think I'm trying to remember who mentioned maybe it was you who mentioned the word organic storytelling. I think to a large extent, the stories, if you're into the universe you're creating, I think the story sort of, to a certain extent, again, within bounds and reasons, sort of writes itself.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And for instance, with Horizon, I outlined about half of the movie, and then I just started writing the script and wrote the whole script. And so, but sometimes I don't do that. So it really just, it depends how well does the story flow from your pen, essentially.
Yeah, and again, Yeah,
when you wrote these characters, when you wrote the characters, Harrison Hawk, Jackson Gates, and Francis Brooks, did you write these characters with these actors in mind, or did these actors bring these characters to life once they were on the page? What's the relationship between writing the character and then actually bringing that character to life?
It's a little bit of both. I wrote especially the captain for Paul, because I'd worked with him on that short with Marc, and Paul mentioned this a bit. And when I worked with Paul, for some reason, I immediately thought, man, this guy would make a really great starship captain, if I ever needed one. For some reason, I hadn't planned to do a Star Trek film at the time, but I thought about that. And so when I started writing this, I just kind of basically I wrote it with Paul in mind. And Jackson, I also pretty much had Marc in mind for that character when I was writing. And sometimes, too, when I'm writing stories, I'll write with certain celebrity actors in mind that I really like for characters. I didn't do that for this story at all. But there's some other stories that I'm working on now, and sometimes it just helps when you can picture somebody that you're familiar with in terms of their performance or who they are personally to lay out that character. So the answer is yes and no.
You believe in the use of, like, what my term for it, you believe in the use in writing, you believe in the use of the term of avatars. In other words, if not necessarily a particular actor in mind for a character, you have at least a mental picture or sometimes a picture that you may have grabbed that fits the dimensions of the character you're working on.
Right, yeah. And oftentimes a lot of my leads will be very much myself, which probably sounds arrogant, I guess, but I mean, it's kind of writing what I know in a way. They write questions that I find really, I should say the characters deal with questions that I find really interesting, and they deal with questions that I think about a lot, and so it's easy for me to play that out in a character.
Now, when you're sitting down to write something like Star Trek Horizon, let's say you start with your story, and when you get to one of these space battles, like in the trailer where there's all the Romulan ships, and I'm assuming they're firing at the horizon at that point, it looks like. How do you go about doing that? You sit down at your computer, and do you actually do the CGI model work, or do you talk to an artist and say, I want this Romulan ship to do this and this one to do this, and I want the Enterprise or the Horizon to spin like that? Or how do you actually take that from the vision you have in your head and actually put it on the screen for us to see?
Well, I should say, first of all, that the ship is the NX-04 Discovery. That's our lead ship. And Horizon is actually the name of a planet in the film. And so when I wrote the script, I hadn't done any of the CG models yet. And on a larger production, you would hand off the script to a studio, you'd hand them a shot list, and they would make you a basic previs, and you'd come in and you'd look at the previs and you'd say, okay, I like this, I don't like this, these are the changes I want it to spin here, I don't, etc. For Horizon, I'm basically doing everything. And so the ships, like I mentioned earlier, the Romulan ship was modeled by Ryan McClure, but the NX-04 was modeled by myself, and I've done all the animations, all the rendering, and basically all of the visual effects in the movie. So the communication in that department has been exceptionally easy because it's just me. So, I mean, I write basically what I wrote in the script a couple of years ago is still what I have in my head now. So it's just a matter of launching into the 3D software and
that was the question popped into my head for the uber geeks who may be listening. Again, without getting into too much technical details, what kind of equipment and software are we talking about here?
Well, my main applications are the main one I use is 3ds Max. It's a 3D modeling and animation package, and it's an industry standard, especially in video games. It's right up there with Autodesk Maya. You find Maya tends to be used more in the motion picture industry just because it has more built-in tools for film. But 3ds Max is really great, and it's basically the package that I grew up on. And it's my main animation, and I also use Adobe After Effects for all my compositing, and 2D effects, and Adobe Premiere for all my editing. And the computer system is it's a dual-core Xeon, or dual processor Xeon processors, I should say, and they are 2.10 gigahertz, and there's 6 cores, so it's a total of 12 cores, and I have 64 gigs of RAM, and an NVIDIA Quadro K4000 graphics card, and a 20-ish terabyte RAID array. So there's plenty of space.
And you could still use more dilithium crystals, by the way.
Yes, I need more dilithium crystals.
Aye, Captain, I cannot give you any more.
Well, I need them now, Mr. Scott. Or I should say Mr. Brooks.
So how about the soundtrack? Are we going to hear any Alexander Courage music on the soundtrack, or John Williams, perhaps? What can we expect for the soundtrack?
Well, the soundtrack is also another thing that I'm doing myself. In college, I was a music major, and music has always been a huge part of my life, and I was actually writing music before I was making movies. And so I'm doing the score as well, and it's kind of a mixture of typical Star Trek style plus my own style. And they're all original themes in it. There's no Alexander Courage or anything. I picture Courage's themes and the themes in the other shows as identifiable with those shows, and Courage in particular is identifiable with the Enterprise.
I have to butt in on this too, because I got to tell you, music makes a movie, and Tommy has literally blown me away. I think people are really going to like what he's been working on. I think the trailer is a really good example, and even that first scene that's on YouTube is a really good example of some of the stuff that's coming out.
Thank you.
Now, please tell me we're not going to hear that god awful theme song from Star Trek Enterprise.
Hey pal, I like that theme song.
You
shut
your face. Sorry, I had to poke my head in on that one. I love that song.
Where's the heart, man?
It's been a long road getting from there to here. It's a great song.
I gotta say, of all the Star Trek series, I think Enterprise was my favorite series, but of all the theme songs, I think that was the worst. Just my opinion.
Oh, it's so popular to hate on the theme song. I think people need to get over it. It's been like 10 years now, I think people need to realize that the theme song is what it is at this point. And
I think it's key to remember that it was a different time too. They were the imagery of that opening sequence. Just to comment on it, because we're all nerds, I think the imagery they put together way back then was amazing. That opening sequence was beautiful. Whether the music worked or not, I don't know. I've seen it retied with that Archer's theme thing, and that works too. But it worked. It worked for that show. It worked for the time and what they were doing.
It was. I mean, I know the original series is the original series, but come on, you're telling me that the entrance to Enterprise is worse than a theremin? Seriously?
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually don't prefer the take on the original series theme. Now, I do love the take on that theme in the JJ movies, that reorchestration.
Well, something to think about.
Yes, I'm sorry to keep down the emotions of hating the theme song, but I'm actually a fan. But no, just to assuage your concerns, it does not appear in the film.
It does, though. I take a shower to it at some point in the film. I understand there is a nude scene I'm in.
Oh yes.
And you're listening to that song on your iPod?
Of course, right. My futuristic tablet iPad that's thicker than an iPad. Yes.
So I have a question about why did you pick Discovery? I mean, don't get me wrong. I know where you got it from, but out of the things of history, why Discovery versus other ones, Challenger and stuff like that?
It's kind of the unofficial name of the NX-04, as far as I could tell from the research that I did. They used Discovery in the name. It's the name of the NX-04 in the novels, and it's basically the name that Trekkies take as the name of the NX-04. And so while we don't follow the story of the novels or anything like that, I figured why not use it? It's a good name, and the NX-class ships are all named after space shuttles anyway, so I just figured I would stick with Discovery, and I thought it fit the ship pretty well.
Well, I totally agree. I didn't realize, because I'm a huge Star Trek buff on television. I'm a big book reader, so I didn't realize that the books ID'd the ship's names. So there you go. Now you taught me something.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
Well, what kind of co-host are you, Dan? You should have known that already.
I'm like some other people on this cast right now. I'm a short, bald guy who doesn't pay attention, I guess.
I have a full head of hair, thank you.
Not on camera, you don't. So that's what we see.
Big deal.
Oh well, Ryan, you're still with us?
I am, yes.
Well, I wanna put you on the spot here. As I take it that you're the resident Trekkie of the bunch.
Oh no, I say Tommy and I are pretty equal, but I could start quoting. I mean, yes, I'm a geek, absolutely. I could quote every line from First Contact.
Excellent.
In
because
fact,
I'm going to ask you a question.
I did that one day.
That's true.
I'm going to ask you a question about Star Trek. This is a big debate, and it comes up on our Trek Talk show rather frequently. It comes up a lot. It's a bigger question than a lot of people realize. But what do you think about the J.J. Abrams versions of Star Trek? Do you like them? Do you think they're Star Trek or not Star Trek? Or what is your take on that?
Well, I think it's important to note that they are Star Trek, and that's what Star Trek is now. It's a far departure from all the previous stuff. It's different. It appeals to a new audience. We have to remember at the same time, as many of these Star Trek fans are angry. I read a lot and hear a lot of that stuff too. And we have to remember, this is a filmmaking business, and Paramount is making sure that Star Trek remains viable and continues on. And I think they've done a really good job making sure that they're continuing to make money as a film. And I have read the rumors about the third film recently, and I got to say I'm a little worried about that. But I think absolutely, as much as some hate it and some love it, I sit sort of mediocre. It's good entertainment, I guess. It's no Deep Space Nine for me or anything like that, but I'll eat it.
And I should say just a comment on Ryan's thing about it being a business. We have to remember that Insurrection was pretty much a failure. Nemesis was pretty much a failure. And so there was no way on this earth that Paramount was going to make another one of those. And so they had to do something different, and they did something that made a crap ton of money. And so that's what they're going to keep doing. And Trekkies can be pissed off about it, but they're going to go where the money is. And
I think that's important. The difference, too, is that I think, J.J. Abrams came into Star Trek with, he was going to save it, and I think he succeeded with that mission. And if you go back to those last two next gen films, there were reasons that they didn't do well, and I think a lot of that goes into how they were conceived and developed, and certainly budgetary reasons as well. I mean, those movies were never given a budget like Star Trek 2009. I mean, to Tommy's point there.
Yeah, I think Nemesis had a budget of like $60 million at most. Right. It might have been around 40, but I think it was around 60. Whereas,
and Patrick Stewart commanded most of that budget.
Yes, I'm sure you're right. He probably did.
Now, First Contact, I thought, was one of the better Star Trek movies that they made.
Right. But then Paramount said they didn't want anything dark again, and I think they shot themselves in the foot. The creative team behind it had to go a different direction.
Yeah, because The Next Generation was such a good TV series. It had some great characters, but they couldn't make a movie.
I disagree. I think in '96 they were at their top of the game. I think when First Contact came out, I mean that was a box office gold, and I think it all went downhill from there.
Now, while we're talking about movies, Nemesis, Insurrection, and Horizon, let's lump them all together. When you go to make a movie, nobody goes into a movie and says, I'm going to make a cheap, crappy movie, right? So
I think some people in the industry not as violently as that, but I'd say that there are, let's quick make a movie and get it out and make money.
There's a lot of people who do that. There's a whole business on making quick, cheap movies, and I've been in several of them.
So when they sat down, to write, let's say Insurrection. No, let's say Nemesis. No, Insurrection, because Jonathan Frakes directed Insurrection. When they sat down and wrote Insurrection, how much input, when they're sitting around the table reading the script, and Jonathan Frakes is the director, who also directed First Contact, how much authority does he have to say, guys, this movie is crap, this story sucks, we need to change it? Or are they just given the script and this is what you're going to do and here's your paychecks and let's move on?
That's exactly it. We have to remember there was an original script to Insurrection. It was going to be the Heart of Darkness thing or whatever. And, that didn't happen. And this was what, as far as my understanding goes, that's what the studio wanted. And, there's a point where you just got to make the movie. And that's, Frakes is brought into, a director rather, is brought in to make that script. Their job is to do that movie.
I mean, because as Star Trek fans, we have a hard time swallowing that fact. We expect a quality Star Trek film like Horizon is going to be, and we expect these people to get their facts straight and do their homework and have everything be correct and proper. And then they put out something like Insurrection and Nemesis, and we're all scratching our heads saying, I could have done a better movie than that, and I don't know anything about making movies.
Well, I should say that I'm a big fan of Nemesis. I think it was a great movie, and I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I think that I've watched all of those movies a gajillion times. I don't see anything factually wrong with them in terms of where they went with the stories.
They were all written by the right people. They were. Exactly. Insurrection isn't a bad movie on the surface. It's an okay script. It's a cheap movie to make. We have to remember they were coming out of a pretty dark 1996 with First Contact, and they wanted, Paramount said that we got to do something lighter and fluffier, and that's what the answer was. And unfortunately, I think, as Tommy's point with Nemesis, when we get into 2002 there, some time had passed, and, Patrick Stewart and Brent Spiner had a little too much creative control, and I think stuff happens,
Yeah,
it's
I
unfortunate.
would agree with that. Go ahead.
It's unfortunate, but true. So when Paul starts becoming too demanding, with his role in Star Trek Horizon Part 2, then I guess it'll be time to write him out and promote Marc to the role of captain, right, Tommy?
Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll just hire Patrick Stewart because they're both bald, so they look exactly the same.
Right.
Exactly the same.
Yes.
Me and Patrick, I get mistaken for Stewart all the time.
But Paul doesn't have that British accent though that Sir Patrick has.
Yes, but I could very well get one. Don't you worry about that, my good man.
Oh, it's very easy, number one.
That almost sounded more like
Irish.
Yeah, I
Ian McKellen.
I drink whiskey, so I got a much better Irish than I do a British. It's funny on that point, which is as an actor and in the industry, I've actually been approached by people who are in the industry, and when this was coming out, and this is something that you'll see a lot on the YouTube with the people that are watching the trailer. There was a time when they were not sure that they thought this was Paramount's next movie, and so there's a lot of people who are looking for that Star Trek 3 trailer, and they're coming to Star Trek Horizon, and they're to Tommy's credit, obviously they are looking at this and they're like, some of them are confused. Now, obviously, it's easy to confuse a lot of the YouTube audience. They're the ones that are surfing. However, a lot of them, even some of the people who are in the industry, I work at a studios, and the guy who owned the studios, was like, I can't believe you're in the next Star Trek. And, I told, and of course I didn't deny it. And so, for a couple of weeks, he thought that Paul Lang was cast in the next Paramount Star Trek. And eventually he, came to his senses. But, it's Tommy's credit. A lot of people are looking at this and saying that this is studio quality work. The stuff that Tommy's doing is definitely something that could be walked into a studio. And
and there's no stopping the Star Trek fans that are out there. I think of all the fan bases, I think Star Trek has some of the most vile and mean people out there. But
yeah.
I think
now, Tommy, what advice? Let's say that Ken and Dan and myself decided that we wanted to get together and make our own Star Trek movie. Captain Dan. And what would be our first step? How would we go about doing that?
I would say first, well, it depends on how serious you want to be. I'm perfectly okay with people who don't seem to have an interest in making the best possible film that they can because they're just doing it to have fun. But then there's people who don't seem to put a whole lot of effort into the films that they make, fan films especially, and they put them out there with, these huge expectations. And I try to say this without sounding self-aggrandizing at all, but I mean, the first step is to learn how to make movies. And I'm certainly not putting myself in a league with Spielberg or with Frakes or with anyone, but at the least I can say that I was making movies for a number of years before I attempted to do anything like this. And it's because this is what I want to do as a career. This is my career. This is my passion, as they say. And so it depends on the level of project that you want to put out there. If you really want to make a fantastic film, I think the best way to do it is to start by just making stuff, and probably short films, and probably not something like Star Trek, because it is incredibly hard to do. And I did stuff before this that wasn't really that great in terms of visual effects and what have you, because I was learning. And it is a learning process. I think it's something that you have to do for a long time if you really want to make a great product. And I'm not saying that by saying like I have this great product, but to get to the point where you can be confident with what you're doing, I think it's just a matter of getting out there and starting to make movies.
Well, I can tell you from a fan's point of view, and Ken or Dan can chime in at any time that they want to add their 2 cents. When I started doing the Facebook page and this show, and there's a lot of fan films out there, Axanar, Renegade, Star Trek Continues, Star Trek Phase 2, Star Trek Horizon. There's quite a few of them floating around out there, just to name a few, and I'm not picking favorites. Those are just the ones that came to the top of my head. But what attracted me to Axanar and Horizons in particular, not to pick favorites over the other ones, is the fact that, in my mind, Horizon and Axanar are original story ideas with characters that have been created by those people that are making that film in a time with their own story, whereas a lot of the other fan films are, Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, my next door neighbor's playing the Admiral, so on and so forth. And the acting isn't all that great, and, they put a lot of effort into it, but it just doesn't come across as believable. I guess that's not the right word, but when I see the trailers for like Axanar and Horizon, I see a quality movie being made where they're not cutting any corners, they're going all out, the actors are giving it their all, the outfits, the costumes look good, the sets look good, and I get excited about seeing something like that. And I think
Jim,
your project is one of them.
The thread that seems to be running through a lot of this, and I think that's been mentioned by the actors or so, and Tommy, is that it really is and does distill down to the fact of whether or not you care about what you're doing. That's what's important. Do you care about what you're doing? Do you care about your craft? Do you care about the product? Are you trying to make a film that is going to be meaningful? Or when you write a screenplay, are you trying to write a screenplay that you want to be a film? That's what's important. That's part of the process. If you're part of the process, and if you really, really genuinely want to accomplish this is what you have to do.
I would agree with that, and I think along the line, a lot of the problem with fan films is people aren't necessarily interested in being passionate about the craft of filmmaking, but they're interested in being passionate about making Star Trek, which is fine, and that's good. You should be passionate about the thing that you're making a movie about, but you can't have one without the other. And for me, I'm equally as passionate about filmmaking as I am about Star Trek. And I think for any quality that I may have achieved is because of that reason. It's not just because I wanted to make a Star Trek movie, but because I want to make movies.
Now, did you have to get Paramount? Did you have to get anybody's permission to do a Star Trek film and use the NX and whatnot, or are you just flying off on your own?
I did not. I should say that I didn't have to get permission, but for instance, Doug Drexler, who is the designer of the NX-01, we have his blessing. He's a fan of the project, and he's been really supportive. And in terms of Paramount or CBS, none of the fan films really have any official sort of okay from them, but they're generally pretty okay with fan films as long as we are not profiting off of the endeavor. So we can do a Kickstarter to cover our production costs, but we can't sell the story as our own. We can't take copyright for the intellectual property. And so there is kind of a gray area there, but as long as we make sure to give Paramount and CBS credit for their intellectual property, we're okay for the most part. We haven't had any trouble with them, and we've always been very careful to be cognizant of them and their rights.
Now, when you started this project, you said it was 2 years in the making?
Yeah, thereabouts, give or take. 2.5
So
now.
how long did it actually, once you cast your actors and once you had your script completed, how long did it actually take you filming on set before you had a rough draft of the film completed?
Well, honestly, I still don't have a rough draft of it completed. I mean, it's the scenes are edited, but since we're all virtual sets and everything, there's no actual sets, so a lot of the scenes are still green screen. but the shooting lasted about a year, and Paul talked about this too, and I'm sure he can attest to the frustrations of scheduling from a different perspective than I can. But it's because this is a passion project for all of us, and so there would be times where we would go, sometimes months in between a shooting day. We'd shoot, and then it would be a few months later, the seasons would be different, which is fine because it was all green screen anyway. But it was often a joke on set when they would get there and say, oh, last time we shot it was snowing outside, and or what have you. So the total time from start to finish was actually almost exactly a year for shooting.
Now, Ryan, I have a question for you. When you're filming a scene, like Tommy just said, and it's the middle of spring and you're out at the beach and then you have to go in and film a scene, and then here it's the middle of the winter and it's 20 below zero, and you have to go back and complete a scene that you did 6 months ago, how do you get right back? How do you step right back into that moment?
I think as an actor, when I initially sat down with the script, we all kind of have our own techniques into terms of how we learn lines and our characters. And I think for me, it's always been very, very simple to sit right back into a character. I kind of I put a lot of myself into the characters that I portray. That's kind of how I do it. And so for me, it's literally as simple as just looking at the words on a piece of paper and coming right back to where my thoughts were. In terms of like seasons and stuff like that, it wasn't ever difficult to do. With the schedules being so complicated, I think there's a lot of times I'm talking to nobody. The scenes would be composited together with characters that had been shot months ago. I'd be, in terms of my schedule, when I'd get there, maybe the scene had already been shot and I'm the last element that needs to be shot. So I'm just blind acting on a green screen. So.
And I'd say that was a testament to these people, because there are some scenes actually with 3 or 4 people in them, and we shot every person in that scene on a different day, and sometimes months apart. And I think that they all did an exceptional job of acting in such a way that when the scene is put together in the edit, it looks like they were all there on the same day.
Now, Paul, how would you say there's a difference between working on an independent fan film like Star Trek Horizon versus something like Batman versus Superman?
Kraft services, the food. Definitely the food's different.
It's getting fed.
I got you really good pizza from down the street, Paul. You like that pizza.
Yes, the pizza was great, and we had pizza every single time.
Hey, there was one time we didn't.
That is true. You know what it is that like when I did a day on set, with the Batman movie, I didn't get to meet Zack Snyder or even Ben Affleck or whatever. You don't have it's a large set. There's literally hundreds of people. It's very business-like, but there's no sense of connection. Now, I did have a feature film this year, Pups United, where I'm the lead, and I spent a lot of time on set there with the director and all. But it still wasn't a personal project in the sense that when you're doing an independent film, this is Tommy's child. This is Tommy's like the baby for all intents and purposes. Whereas, like you'd mentioned before, when you have a director who comes in to direct, a script that is given to him from the studios, and you have the studios breathing down his neck because they want something that may not be his thing. This is Tommy's baby, and the feeling that you get when you're on a set there is it's much more of a family endeavor, much more of a personal endeavor. You got a lot more invested into it. That being said, I think what I'd like to see next is I'd love to see Tommy with a budget. That's where this goes next for Tommy Kraft. He's done. You talked about a shoestring budget compared to Hollywood. It's not even close to a shoestring budget. Okay, his budget's like probably the thickness of one of the hairs on top of my head compared to a real Hollywood budget. you know, then the next thing which is going to be great to see as Tommy, you know, goes on with his career is when he gets an actual budget, you know, where he can afford a producer or, you know, an assistant. He can you know, afford a true crew, and you know, he had great people. Everyone who was involved in this film, like I said, it's a passion project. They came in, they gave their time, they gave their effort, you know, and they really put their faith in Tommy getting this done. And it's, you know, it's well worth it. You know, he's going to get this done. There's no doubt about it. But you know,
so the way do you guys think? Do you guys think better of the process because it is so family oriented, and because Tommy was able to do so extraordinarily well with what he had? Does it leave a better impression on you that he was able to pull it off, such as he did?
I do, yes.
Or rewarding for you in that way?
Well, okay. I give Tommy more credit because he is creating, and like Ryan said, you know, creating a feature-length film with no budget is an endeavor that very few people understand the complexity behind. You know, they don't understand what goes into it, from, you know, the sound mixing and color mixing, and, you know, and putting the scenes together. And then putting CG in an independent film is something that is very, very unheard of, you know, just because of, you know, the amount of time and effort and expertise that is needed to do that. That being said, you know, there's a reason why actors love, you know, feature films with large budgets, is because they can put out the product, you know, much faster. You know, there's a lot more systems in place. So independent films are a labor of love. You know, but like Tommy's saying right now, he's doing all the labor, you know, so he's got to love it. But if he had, you know, even $100,000 or $1 million, a lot of that labor would be, you know, disseminated out, and it would make the process a little bit more timely. And but this is going to be his piece that really catapults him into the next level. I truly believe that. I know, you know, there's been, you know, some talk with him and other people, you know, that want to get him out there and get him on another project. And so this is definitely the first stepping stone that Tommy's taking into a much larger universe.
Now, Tommy, while we're on that topic, I want to ask you a question. Do you think that in today's world, do you think that with more people making independent films and the more access they have to the technology and these Kickstarters and the internet and this type of thing, do you think that is good for the film industry, or do you think that that's bad for the film industry?
Oh, I think it's great, because I think we now have the option for filmed entertainment in so many more avenues than just what the big pockets in Hollywood give us. And I don't say that to sound like, you know, a typical liberal hippie, but it is nice that we have all of these avenues now where you can make a movie for $20,000 or for $20 million or $1 million or whatever, and there's always going to be an avenue for somebody to see it. And also, while people are doing these projects on lower budgets, the big pockets in Hollywood might see it and say, hey, this person could make us a lot of money, and they hire that person to do a big budget movie. Or, you know, that person can then work their way up. And so I think it gives the viewers a lot more avenues to consume content, which is fantastic. And it gives the creators a lot more avenues to pursue their career, which is also fantastic. I think it's good in every way possible.
Now, with a big budget movie, let's say Paramount came along and said, you know, Tommy, we want to make Horizon 2, The Revenge of Captain Hawk, whatever. And we're going to hire Frakes to direct it, and we're going to hire this one and that one and this one and that one. Do you feel that would remove the creative process from your hands and put it into some big budget corporation that's only taking your idea to make money, and that's going to dilute your vision? Or do you think that's something that would be good for your Horizon 2?
Well, I mean, I think at that point, I wouldn't even really be involved. So, but I wouldn't mind really. I'm pretty open-minded with any creations I make. I don't really care what people do with them, as long as it makes people happy. And so, if Paramount came along, I mean, and first of all, to be honest, legally they probably wouldn't even need my permission, since Star Trek is their property anyway. But if I would be quite honored if Paramount came along and said, even if they wanted Frakes or someone else to direct it, if they said, hey, we liked your movie so much, we want to make a sequel of it, I would be quite flattered and quite honored. And any way that they would want to involve me, I would. If they didn't want me to be director, I would fight for that. But I would still take the opportunity, whatever it is.
Okay, so I got a question a little lighter, a little more fun, but still Star Trek related. I think I want an answer from everybody. Just a real short burst, because it is getting a little close on time. My question to each of you, seeing that you're all related to Star Trek and some of you are Star Trek geeks like I am, do you see Star Trek returning to television, whether it be Netflix or standard television, in the next 5 years? And if it did, what would you like to see? Tommy?
I highly doubt it, but I would love it. I think Star Trek needs to be back on TV. I'm not one of those people that says it should only be on TV. I think it's great for either medium. And whatever they end up doing with it, I'm going to obviously watch it. But I seriously have doubts that they will pursue a TV deal.
What about you, Paul?
Well, I think actually that Star Trek will return. I think Netflix, the streaming platform is one where, it's a lot easier to get a project up and running, not only from a cost-wise but distribution-wise, whether it's Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, they're all doing original material. And even though it's owned by Paramount can definitely give the rights to, whomever to place it on, the streaming, the platforms. I do think, actually, you will see some form of Star Trek coming on to Netflix. I think the demand is there. Obviously, from a dollar standpoint, you've got Trekkies who are willing to put their money where their mouth is. Star Trek Horizon, we did well on Kickstarter, but you look at the Kickstarters that you got with Renegades and with Axnar and that amount of money there, those folks are willing to put that there. Well, that will get noticed. And some executive in Paramount will say, why are we not profiting from that? And why is YouTube able to, be the one that's profiting from our product? So I think it's just going to happen. Now, in terms of which Star Trek it's going to be, well, I'll leave that up to you guys. You guys are, you guys would know which one's more popular. But just from a dollar standpoint, I think Star Trek is going to come back in some form or another.
And what about you, Mark?
I don't know. I really think it's highly dependent on the continued success of the new crop of movies. As a non-Trekkie myself, I can say that I've been, exposed to the new movies, and it's gotten me interested. But I think the interest needs to be maintained over a longer period of time before I would be inspired to sit down and watch a television series, a newly created television series, let me qualify that, over the span of 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons, So just from that point of view, I think it would be great, absolutely. I think it's perfect for a Netflix or Amazon type streaming thing like Paul was talking about. But I kind of want to see from the outside looking in where it's going to go before I would commit to a television series. Yeah.
Ryan?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take more of a business perspective. We got to remember that, there was 18 years solid of Star Trek on television, and we also have to remember that in 1995, Paramount launched an entire television network with the flagship show being Star Trek Voyager. And I think as a business model, Star Trek served its purpose during those years, and I don't see it as a viable television operation right now. working in the television industry, I'll tell you that the landscape in television is so far changed from where it was. Star Trek lived in syndication. That doesn't exist as far as the way it did back then. And I think, as your streaming options start coming out, that could be an option. I think it's further than 5 years away, and further to that point, I think you got to look at those 4 series that ran consecutively, and if there is another show, what's it going to do differently? Because they did a lot of good shows during those 18 years, and from a television perspective, it's more valuable to rerun those things, like your Next Generations that are now in HD. It's more valuable just to rerun what you have than to probably take another stab at it. I think it's really going to depend on Star Trek 3, and my prediction to that is based on what I'm seeing. I don't think it's going to be nearly as successful. I think you're going to watch the third fizzling of Star Trek coming. So I think television's a bit of ways away. I think there's such a glut of it out there, and we have to remember that Enterprise itself, while it was a decent show and stuff, it was a business, and it proved that there was something that didn't work. That's why it's not on TV.
Right. Well, to follow up, since it's my question, I'll follow up with my response to it is, I think we would see one in production in the next 5 years, but I don't see it being on television. Star Trek's one of the top viewing things on Netflix, so I'm almost tempted to say they'd rather commit to like a season, similar to, like a House of Cards type of thing, where they commit to 10 episodes, toss it in there, and worst thing that happens is they put it on their streaming service and they get their money off of renewals and then go away with it. So
it would never make enough money doing that, I don't think, to actually, make sense for making, how much money goes into making those shows. I just don't see right now how a streaming service is going to give them those ad dollars to make a TV show.
Well, Marvel sold some of their contract to Netflix, and we know that's not going to be cheap to produce because Disney's not going to let them do some partial half series, partial half series attempt to. So I think something like that is going to be make or break whether we'll see that, because now we're talking big production money for a streaming service. If it fails, then I don't ever see Star Trek coming. So I'm hopeful, but that's my opinion, and it's worth nothing in the real world.
Well, as long as we have people like Tommy giving us these quality fan films, and we have something we can watch and something to fulfill that Star Trek hunger, and I think a lot of people are dying to see some Star Trek, and I think that's why the JJ Star Treks, whether you love them or hate them, they're making a lot of money, and they're bringing a lot of people to Star Trek that otherwise wouldn't be there, and that's only good for the franchise. And we're down to 5 minutes, so Ken, do you have anything you want to say before we close out the show?
Like I said, not personally, no, but again, probably what would be best if the 4 guys wanted to sort of just sort of wrap things up and give their final impressions and comments and anything they want to necessarily say to the fans of Horizon.
Yeah, let's start with Ryan. Do you have any last words you want to say to the fans, Ryan?
Yeah, I think that the show, or the film is going to be a really good treat. I think if you were a fan of Star Trek Enterprise, it's going to fill a gap that you yearned for right after the close of season 4. It will fill that, and I'm really excited to see it myself. I can't.
Hello?
Uh-oh.
No. Oh, did we lose you? How about you, Mark? You have anything you want to say to the fans before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, I just I'm thrilled to be a part of this movie, and I can't wait to see the final product as well. I want to thank everybody who's gone to the YouTube trailer and watched it, and I love that it's so polarizing. I love reading the comments, and I love that Paul has taken the time, and Tommy, to respond to people's comments, positive and negative, and to really allow them to understand that this is still a work in progress, and to not freak out about whether it follows canon or not. I think Tommy's done his damnedest to assure that it does fit into the Star Trek universe. So I say bring on the positive comments and the negative comments. That means you're watching it, and thank you for that. I think the end product is going to be phenomenal. And I also want to say a happy birthday to Janine Thompson, who plays Amelia. She is 29 today, again. And
happy again.
I told her I would mention something about her birthday on Facebook. So there's that, and just thanks and stick with us. And it's going to be a great movie, and stay along for the ride.
And how about you, Tommy? You want to wrap up the show for us?
Sure thing. I will do that. I can only echo what Marc said and what Ryan was saying before he got booted somehow. And it's been a heck of an experience. And I thank everybody for watching and so far, and for staying tuned for all this time that it's been going on, and for the new people who are interested. And it's coming soon. It definitely won't be any later than this summer, just to give myself enough time. But I'm glad people are receiving it well.
I think they definitely are, and I'd like to take a moment to thank Paul Lang and Marc Bowers and Ryan Weber and you, Tommy, for joining us, taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk with the fans a little bit about this project. And I'd like to thank my co-hosts Dan and Ken for joining and making this show possible. And I'd like to thank all you guys out there for joining us, listening to us, supporting us, and hanging out in the chat room, because without you guys, we would just be talking heads. So, we do this for you guys. And go to the Facebook page and check out the trailer for Star Trek Horizon. You'll see it right at the top of the page. You can also go to the Star Trek Horizon Facebook page, and there you can leave questions or comments for Tommy or Paul or Marc or Ryan, and any of the other cast of on that Facebook page they can question too, Tommy?
Yeah, it's actually usually just me that answers on Facebook, or Liam, who's one of our executive producers. It's mostly me or him. But if anyone has any specific questions for any of the cast, go ahead and put it up there, and we will certainly pass it along, because they all look at the page.
And that's Star Trek Horizon. I will put a link on our Facebook page to their Facebook page for you guys if you want to go and check that out as well. On next week's show, we're going to be talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 1. I know Dan's been looking forward to that, because Deep Space Nine is one of his favorite shows. So we're going to give Dan a chance to put his money where his mouth is and not pull the old, I missed that episode, I didn't see that one. So we're going to put Dan on the spot next week. And that's all we have for you guys this week. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time to join us. And make sure you guys tune in next week, same bat time, same bat channel. And I want to send a shout-out one more time to David Hernandez, because there's the lady warning me. Without David Hernandez's help, we could not have pulled off the Axonar show or this one. And Tommy, maybe we'll see you guys at a Star Trek convention in the not too distant future, huh?
That would be fantastic. I'd love to go.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun to meet you guys at a Star Trek convention, talk to the fans, sign some autographs, and I got to say good night to everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Good night, Jim. Good night, everybody else. Good night.
Thank you.
Let's see what's out there. Engage.
Horizon, so aptly named, both for its majesty and its grand power. 250,000 years ago, one race united the entire galaxy for the first time in peace. But there is always the separatist, one who will not join the whole. The Arrowway, a race of beings unlike any the Iconians had ever known, sought to lay waste to the galaxy and the Great Alliance, to rebuild it anew. They were cunning. One by one, they turned the galaxy against its protectors. And when the races of the Great Alliance turned their attention to destroying the wrongly accused Iconians, the Arrowway secretly constructed their greatest weapon.
Incoming gateway request.
From who?
Kraft to Jean-Yon.
Our last defenses on Iconia have fallen. They'll have taken the entire system by day's end. And there's something else. I saw an Arrowway leading enemy troops.
Did the refugee transports make it off Iconia?
I think one, but I can't be sure.
All the more reason to complete our mission.
We'll find a way to survive. We always do.
We have to move the weapon to a safe location. I know you disagree.
I didn't say that.
You don't have to.
You know better than anyone that violence begets violence every time.
The Council made the decision.
The Council is gone!
We spend our entire lives, entire millennia, devoted to protecting life. And the same people that are part of the very alliance we created seek to destroy us. I don't want to use the Horizon any more than you do. Even the thought of using an Arrowway weapon is distasteful to me. But we must save the rest of our people. Let's go to the Horizon and begin preparing.
Shall I open a gateway to the Horizon, Monsieur?
Yes, thank you. I'll miss your presence, Alita.
Yours as well, sir.
Shut down and prepare your systems for cold storage.
I will do as you wish.
Shall we?
Beginning shutdown of systems.